For thou art an holy people unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, and Yahuwah had chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself, above all the nations that are upon the earth. It is no coincidence that people do not know who we are. It is by design. Ever since our oppressors shipped our ancestors to this side of the globe, they have done everything in their power to keep us from discovering who we are, including stealing our identity. For years, the dominant portrayal of biblical characters have been of white Europeans. From paintings to movies, our oppressors have always presented to us pale-skinned Europeans as biblical characters. Have you noticed that their history books, school curriculums, and religious institutions have always had little to say about us and our history prior to slavery, but so much to say about them and their history? This is because the powers that be don't want us to see that their plans have worked out quite well, as the vast majority of us today have no clue who we are. Let's take a look at some Bible verses, because given the biblical facts, it is virtually impossible for the Europeans to be the chosen people of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 10, it states, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads." This means that the river went out of Eden and became four separate rivers. In verse 11 it states that the name of the first is Pison, that is it which compassed the whole land of Havalia, or Arabia, where there is gold. The Pison River is the modern-day Blue Nile River, which is located on the east side of Africa, right above Ethiopia, and streams all the way around the land of Arabia. In verse 13, it states, "And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compassed the whole land of Ethiopia." The Gihon River is located to the right of Ethiopia, wrapping around its entire land, just as the verse states. There are numerous descriptions of African countries and places that the characters of the Bible lived in. For instance, the first nation to be mentioned in the Bible is Ethiopia, as you can clearly see here in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 13. We all know that Ethiopians are black. When you consider that the Garden of Eden is located in northeast Africa, where the indigenous people were living, and that the dirt there in the region was the color reddish-brown, like the meaning of Adam's name, Genesis chapter 2 verses 7 through 8 reads, "And Yahuwah Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed." With that being said, how is it possible for the Europeans to be the chosen ones of the Bible, when all men who are in fact human came from Adam? This leads me to leprosy. It's time that we turn our attention to white skin, because I believe we're living in the year of exposing darkness. And in order for us to understand who we are as a people, we must expose the lies of our oppressors. In Numbers chapter 12, Moses' sister and brother, Miriam and Aaron, spoke out against him and slandered his name because he had married an Ethiopian woman. They didn't speak out against him because of her skin color, but because she was of another nation. Their behavior angered Yahuwah, and as a punishment, he turned Miriam's skin leprous, as she became white as snow. Now, if Miriam, who was an Israelite, was white to begin with, what would have been the curse of turning white skin white? It's a fact that the Bible always mentions leprosy in the context of the skin turning to the color white as a result of a disease or sin. We can see this in Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 4. "If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that had the plague 7 days. Have you seen this TV series called The Chosen? where all the biblical characters are depicted as white? This is obviously a lie from the pits of hell. The Bible does not depict any of the chosen people as European descent with pale skin or leprosy. In fact, one of the most prominent figures of the Old Testament is King David. He is described in the scriptures in 1 Samuel 16 and 12. It states, King David was ruddy and with all of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look at. Many people think that because the Bible says this, he was a white man. But if you recall, ruddy is the same term that was used to identify the complexion of Adam, who we have already proven to be black or reddish brown. Therefore, King David was also brown. This may sound silly or like an insult when I say this, but I'm being serious. If 1 Samuel chapter 16 and 12 says that King David was ruddy, he was beautiful and good to look at, who are these goofy looking people that they continue to put on the big screen, depicting them as the chosen people? The Caucasus people have been able to deceive the whole world into believing everyone in the Bible is white by whitewashing history. Prior to the 14th century, hundreds of years before America became the powerful nation that it is today, everyone on earth knew that the people of the Bible were black, and that ancient civilization was started by black people. Even Europe, to whom the white people of today lay claim to originating from, was created by the Japhites, the Hamites, and the Shemites. During the 6th century, there were several mandates given to destroy all religious symbols, images, and monuments of black people and replace them with white ones. In 1502, Pope Alexander VI, known formally as Rodrigo Borgia of Rome, commissioned Leonardo da Vinci to paint white images of the biblical Christ, using his son Caesar Borgia as the model to deceive the general public in believing that the Christ was white. Alexander VI sanctioned guards at the catacombs to prevent people from viewing the images of the original black Christ and other biblical characters. However, in order to continue on this line, the world would need to also believe that all the biblical characters were white. Therefore, in 1508, the following Pope, Julius Caesar II, hired the famous artist Michelangelo to paint the white images of Christ, along with the other key figures of the Bible. Again, Christ, along with the other key figures of the Bible, were painted on the famous chapels of the Vatican in the city of Italy, with the true images of the biblical characters removed from public access. White people became the face of the biblical Israelites, and Caesar Borgia became the image that we all know as Christ. After the image of white Christ became the standard image of the Messiah, it was used to install white supremacy throughout Europe. Since Christianity was the dominant religion in Europe, it then became the dominant religion of every nation they invaded and conquered. So when the Europeans later conquered the West Indies and Native Americans who were living here during the 15th century, all citizens under their rule were forcefully converted to Christianity. This was also the case for our ancestors who were brought here on ships from Africa. As a result of our history being taught to us from our oppressors, we have been led to believe many lies in regards to who we are as a people. It has been taught to us since the days of slavery that we are native Africans who were sold to Europeans by other Africans. Although our homeland is Israel, located in Northeast Africa, we are not African because we are the children of Shem through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When our ancestors arrived to the Americas, the slave masters who purchased them already knew who they were, the descendants of the biblical Israelites. But how did they know? Well, for one, the majority of the plantation owners were Jewish. and were in charge of marketing and advertising the Hebrew slaves to other plantation owners. Secondly, they knew their slaves were Hebrews by their names. Many of the Hebrews that migrated to Africa from Israel had names with the word Yah in them to signify the fact that they were his people. According to slavevoyages.org, many of the slaves that were brought from West Africa also had Hebrew names that included the three-letter phrase Yah in them. Not only that, but a large portion of the slave's origin or descent was recorded as being either Igbo or Hebo. Why is this important? Because the term Igbo and Hebo refers to the Igbo tribe and simply means Hebrew. The majority of black people living in the Americas today descend from the Igbo tribe through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This concludes my video for today, family. May the Most High bless you and keep you and your family safe. Remember Matthew chapter 24 and 13. He that endures until the end, the same shall be saved. And until my next video, Shalom.